I'd like to have everybody introduce themselves briefly, describe your background, your position, and why this subject matter, this panel, content distribution in a digital world, is important to you.
Great. Well, thanks, everyone. Ron Lamprecht, NBC Universal. It's great to be back. 13 and a half years ago, I was in a class here for a while. I don't know what the class was, but I was definitely in this room for some class. So I joined NBC summer 2000, and I'm involved in various distribution responsibilities at NBCU. The way I describe it is that right at the cross between traditional distribution and new digital distribution, kind of all things in the middle. And I think, for me, this is what it's all about. It's all about distribution. And I talk about internally, NBC Universal does three things. If you put the studio and the theme park aside, we create content, which I have nothing to do with, which is good. My team lays the groundwork and gets it distributed and gets us money for the content, and then we have an ad sales team that comes in behind and sells advertising against it, and that's about $12 billion or so a year, and then we have theme parks and a movie studio. But this to me is what it's all about.
Rob Sussman. I am happy to be in this building. I never was here when I was a student. I was telling Ron that I was the last graduating class that never attended classes up here. I was downtown at the old New York County Prison on Trinity Place, and if you know anything about prisons, there's no windows, so it was very hard to stay awake at taking night classes. But glad I got through it, and really happy to be an alum here and be here today. I am Executive Vice President and General Manager for Epix, which is a premium television service. We compete with HBO, Showtime, Starz. We launched 4 years ago. We're owned by three major Hollywood studios, Paramount, Lionsgate, and MGM. I've been there since the launch 4 years ago. The venture was put together to actually to adapt to the changes that were happening from a technology standpoint in the video business. So the Epix venture, we were one of the first channels to launch and get our content on Netflix. I have a finance background, went through banking, and then started at Viacom, actually in the Treasury Department, and worked my way through Showtime for many years, through finance and then business development. Worked on the launch of and the business plan for Sundance Channel. Worked there as a CFO for 12 years before I came back over to Viacom and MTV Networks.
I'm Dan Surratt. I was class of 2002, and I guess my claim to fame was that I was on Al Lieberman's first trip to LA. Represent. Which was an eye-opening trip for a number of reasons. But anyway, I oversee business development and digital media for A&E Networks and also a consumer products division. To Ron's point, most of what we focus our time on now is the distribution of our content across all of these digital platforms. I work very closely with our traditional distribution group in terms of the negotiation of those deals, and then what we eventually put out to the partners, and then how we distribute on our own sites and platforms. To Ron's point again, it is the crux of the business, and this is how everyone is consuming content, and the evolution of that's what's kind of brought us all together here today.
Mark Debevoise. I'm the Executive Vice President and General Manager of the Entertainment, Sports, and News Division of CBS Interactive. It's basically all the CBS properties or CBS branded properties at CBS that work in the interactive space. CBS.com, CBSNews.com, CBSSports.com. And then I manage, like these guys, the distribution of our content into those different online, digital, and mobile worlds. And it is really, the key part of our focus as we distribute content into these new platforms. I'm an 04 grad, had an amazing time here in the EMT program. Really helped me transition from a banking background. I'm a recovering investment banker, as I like to say, and spent some time at NBC with two of the guys here on the panel. We had a great time there too. Spent some time at Starz, premium cable service as well. So happy to be here.
Great. So let's get into it. I think we all agree that traditional TV business models are undergoing radical change, due to paradigm shifts in consumer viewing habits and technological innovation. Consumers' demand for content anywhere, anytime, any device continues to increase at an unparalleled pace. And companies in the entertainment, media, and technology space are compelled to modify their models and catch up and execute innovative strategies to distribute and monetize content. So in this current climate of audience fragmentation and dynamic technological change and friction between all the different stakeholders and channels of distribution, what do you believe are the keys to success for keeping the end user engaged with your brands and content experience? And what is your organization specifically doing to adapt to meet such consumer demand and capitalizing on this paradigm shift? Let's start with Dan at A&E.
Okay. So what we're doing is we're essentially we're fishing where the fish are. And a lot of that has to do with the rollout of TV everywhere. All of us have been very involved in a lot of negotiations with a lot of MVPDs, so cable, satellite, or telco partners, and the rollout of that availability, of making that content available across all these platforms. So we at A&E released apps last December for iOS. We quickly followed with Android, and most recently with Kindle. We launched History on the Xbox yesterday. We'll have others coming. We're talking obviously with Roku and Apple and all the others. It is truly about getting your content where the consumer is, and that's really how we've been tackling it, is making sure that we're in front of these people. I think one of the takeaways for us has been that you really don't know mobile until you're in mobile, and doing games and other things is not mobile. Mobile is video, and the consumption levels are staggering.
Rob?
For my business, the premium television business has always been about access to content where you want it and when you want it. So if you think about the evolution of our business, it started off when I was at Showtime. We had one linear feed, and we had two linear feeds. It was a big deal. And then we came out with plexes of those channels, which were themed, so supposedly a better experience for consumers to come. If you wanted to watch an action channel or family channel, you can go watch that content. So at Epix, we're on the other extreme, where we felt from the get-go, we're not ad-supported. So we needed to be on every device, and we wanted to get there first. So we were the first premium network on Xbox, on Roku, on PlayStation 3. We picked those three devices because if you look at where Netflix's traffic is, majority of it is happening on those devices that are connected to TV sets. That's where people want to watch. So we were able to go first because, again, we're not Nielsen metered. So that's been a big part of it. And then secondarily, we've been on the other mobile devices.
How about Ron?
Well, not to restate, TV Everywhere for NBC Universal is a big part of our digital strategy. We're investing a lot of money in rights and technology and all aspects of product to bring our content to the consumer in a very similar way to what Dan and Rob are describing. I'll answer in a different angle, just not to restate. The fragmentation point's a real issue, so just talk a little bit about that for a moment. We're going where the consumer wants to go. We're going where the distributor wants us to go. So we're doing all of that. But the flip side of that is we're creating a lot more consumption that is either unmonetized or under-monetized, which is a huge issue, not so much for Rob from a premium non-ad-supported perspective, but the combination of that commercial issue on the ad sale side plus basically the unraveling of the brand that the content was associated with is something we're spending a lot of time on trying to solve. I don't know if we can ever solve it, but that's a big focus for us, is how do you retain the branding of the network? Because at the end of the day, each of the networks, that's so much of what a cable and a broadcast network is all about. It's the branding of that network, and there's a lot of tailwind you get by having that association with that brand in terms of audience flow and getting people to move from one show to the other. And all of those terms kind of don't have any relevancy in many respects on the digital kind of on-demand side. So how do you translate how TV consumption has historically happened, which is a very live and serialized, programmed structure, to a very, I would say, chaotic, kind of non-linear, non-scheduled, unbranded, under-monetized structure. So that's our challenge to try and solve. But it's a big part of what we're doing. Is how do you try to keep that value together.
Doesn't sound as exciting now.
Well, and I think it's interesting because our point at CBS is we recognize the same things that Ron does, right? We have a very large ad-driven business, but have taken I don't think it's a contrarian, maybe it's a contrarian approach to how we distribute online by essentially not participating in Hulu, which was, in our opinion, the first stripping of the brand of the network off the content and making it someone else's brand and putting another sales force in front of advertisers that isn't the network sales force. And so we stayed away from that part. And I think, one thing we also all didn't mention, which I think drove a lot of our companies to make the decisions we made, was that the DVR really drove this time-shifted this viewing and unmonetized viewing, right? The DVR is only monetized in the first 3 or 7 days, depending on how you do your ad sale, and it allows ad skipping where 60 to 65% of the ads are skipped, which, by the way, I still don't understand why people watch the 35% of the ads or whatever it is. They must be going to the bathroom or napping or something else. But, the idea where digital platforms can force that advertising to be watched, and I mean that in a kind and gentle way, that, that's how we monetize the content, that's how we can afford to make it, so it needs to be watched, how video on demand platforms on cable and satellite providers now can have that advertising, be there throughout a longer window, a 30 or 35-day window for the programming. I think you're seeing all of us sort of go after that time-shifted and potentially place-shifted viewer, both online and in those platforms. And I think the difference for us at CBS is we've not yet bought into the TV everywhere concept. We do get paid for retrans, and we do get paid by those operators, but we have a pretty robust business in putting the content out, day after air, on a direct-to-consumer basis without a password to authenticate it. And that creates a lot more viewership for us, we think, in the near term. And we're curious to see how it plays out, but we think that's sort of a near and midterm strategy that's going to play out pretty well for us.
One of the things that, as a deal lawyer and representing clients in this space, every stakeholder in between, it was certainly a key strategy for the network programmers and the broadcasters to address the issues that they were dealing with over-the-top distributors and the challenges that those provided. Yet 4+ years after its introduction, it's really not catching on, at least arguably, the way it should have caught on, and it's stuck in first gear. So from my perspective, I'd like to hear, and I'm sure everybody else would like to hear, from a business and operational perspective, what are the gating factors? What are the challenges? Why isn't it working the way it should work, and why is it taking so long to be adopted in a grand way across platform? Maybe we could start with Mark.
Look, I think for us, it's a financial issue. We have a robust business, distributing the content since I think 07 or 08, online and now on mobile with iOS and Android apps out there. We have BlackBerry and Windows 8 too, but they don't drive a lot of volume. Yeah, but the concept there is, look, we're making a significant amount of money. We have 20+ million viewers on a monthly basis coming and watching content on our site or on our partner sites where we distribute our full episode content, and that makes us millions and millions of dollars that we're not willing to forego by going what we say behind the TV everywhere wall. And the reason we think it would be foregoing is that when tested, these TV everywhere opportunities have not proven to pull through users. And I'll give you the example of the Final Four that we've done the past few years with Turner, who has required their games to be authenticated, and our games, the CBS games, are non-authenticated. And I can tell you that they do 4-hour tests that you can do, so you get to watch a bunch of games either way. But when you get behind that wall, the usage just plummets, and people don't have their password, they're not able to get through it, they don't know how to get there, and I think there is just some issue with people being able to get through that and still be able to consume the content. So without that audience, there is no advertising business there, and we don't make as much money. And I would say that the cable operators are not yet willing to step up and bridge the gap between the time frame of now, where we're making money in that business, and the future, where the users will actually be behind and we can still make that money. So that gap has not been bridged by anyone. Hard to take that risk right off the bat.
Ron, as maybe a different point of view, given that you've you've got the Olympics and other things, and used authentication and TV everywhere for a variety of your programming. Maybe you have a different view on
Yeah.
what's going on.
Well, you're right that it's not where we'd all like it to be. Data point with the Olympics, Vancouver, we were bleeding edge on that, truly, like the first major attempt at authentication, and I still view it as a huge success. And remember, that was pre-iPad, so everything we did was computer. And it's crazy to think that February 2010, the iPad didn't exist, but so we started then bleeding edge. London, which was far surpassed the success of even Vancouver. But I look at it more philosophically. We've got the same retransmission consent dynamic that Mark has with NBC. We've got Telemundo, which are stations, but then we have almost 15 nationally distributed cable networks, and then on top of that we've got 8 or 9 regional networks, mostly sports networks. So we've got a very, very diverse and broad portfolio, and every single one of those networks relies on 2 revenue streams: the cable fee and then the ad sales piece. And that's how I go back to that triangle, the production of the content, and then it's two ways to make money. One is distribution, one is ad sales. So it's more through the lens of that's the model that we believe in, and we see where the consumer is expecting us to go. So we're basically looking at the model we have now, which is a very good model. It's a very strong model, and whatever we can do to extend the value of that model to the consumer and to the distributor, hopefully will translate into returns in the future. But I don't disagree with Mark. I mean, it's all investment right now, and it's significant investment. Technology, personnel, rights is a whole nother ball of wax. And ultimately, to answer your direct question, why is it taking so long? It's all commercial. I mean, at the end of the day, this is a reality. These are expensive rights. There's expensive investment, and in every example, this is a commercially driven strategy. And because you follow the money. You follow the consumer. Hopefully, the consumer will pay the money, and either directly or indirectly. But that's kind of the reality. And because of that, and because everyone on the programming side, on the distributor side, has all sorts of different commercial timings and when things are at play and the dynamics of different negotiations, it's an excuse, but that's kind of the reality. So you've got this multi-year situation where, depending on what group you're in and what renewals you have, will in many cases kind of drive your timing on a lot of this. And I don't know if that's the right answer, but that kind of is the way it is. So that's a big gating issue that has delayed it over the past 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that is the biggest issue, is that we as an industry, NBC, CBS, Epix, and A&E aren't all on the same deal cycle. And all of our deals aren't done together. We all have individual deals with individual operators, and the rollout of TV Everywhere is tied to those deals. I mean, it's just true, unfortunately. And for the consumer, that's an unfortunate circumstance. But this is a huge ask of the operators for us to distribute our content across all these platforms the way they want to distribute it. So that's a point that has to be negotiated heavily. And so we as the companies are all looking at this in some different ways. We're going to wait because we're making more money right now. Others that actually are part of a cable company as well that are embracing it much harder. Others like us that are independents that are joining it happily when our time comes up. And we're with 2 large distributors now, Comcast and DirecTV. We're adding others quickly, but we're only right now in 54 million homes, and there are 100 out there. And so you get into this dynamic where half the audience can see your content and the other half can't. And it's a frustrating user experience if you go in and you happen to be a Dish customer or a Time Warner customer and you can't see last night's episode of Duck Dynasty or some other show because it's just not available to you and you don't understand the reasoning. Netflix is available to everyone as long as you pay your subscription. You think if you pay your subscription, you'd be able to see this.
Right. I think the content rights is a big driver of that, right? You got to have if you have the content, that's definitely a barrier to people going in and sampling that experience. But I think there's some other reasons why it's not working as well. If you've ever tried to download an app from your cable operator, from the MVPDs, some cases, I won't call it this particular MVPD, but you go there and there's 4 apps there. Which one is actually the TV Everywhere app? They haven't done a good job doing that. The sign-in process. Does anyone know their login, sign-in from their cable company? You know, no one really knows that. So now you got to go find that, or someone else in your household has to go ask you, what's that sign in that you signed in the day that that person came and installed your cable boxes for you. The other reason is they're just not on a lot of devices. So, you know, as long as they've been at the MVPDs, they're, you know, Time Warner is the best. I think a study just came out. They're on more devices than anybody else. But it's amazing that these big conglomerates aren't on a lot of devices that matter. You look at Netflix, majority of their traffic comes from Xbox and PS3. I think it's almost 60%. Most cable operators are not on those boxes. So if you're not on the boxes that matter, you're not going to get a lot of consumption either. So I think that contributes to it also.
In my experience, it's a value issue. You mentioned the rights. I mean, it's you know, trying to balance as a content distributor and creator, a programmer, what value is attributable to the TV Everywhere experience vis-a-vis or versus, you know, the other value that I can get through a native app or through you know, a Netflix or another over-the-top experience. You know, spreading. You know, I don't believe that anyone on the panel saying it's an all or nothing scenario where I've got to just be in this authenticated, you know, behind-the-wall authentication, you know, TV Everywhere type model, or, you know, I'm gonna go on my own and I'm also going to be independent through a native application, or, you know, through the OTTs. I think it's a combination of all of them, but you know, the lack of standards is always an issue too. I think, you know, as a deal lawyer, seeing, you know, multiple sources and stakeholders and solution providers like Adobe and others that are coming up with authentication models, the lack of cooperation, coordination between them and the MVPDs is a problem too in terms of sharing data, the inability of rating companies like Nielsen to measure the viewership on these devices, which obviously, you know, impacts your business and your business from an ad-supported model. So I think it's problematic. I don't see, you know, do you see an end to this anytime soon, or there's some, you know, I don't see there's this huge, you know, silver bullet solution to this. I think it's going to be a work in progress for a while as you guys decide to.
I think the other thing I'd throw out there is that we're also talking predominantly about the out-of-home right, which I think some of us would say might be a different right than the right that the cable and satellite guys license for in the home. And what's interesting about in the home is that the VOD systems, when they are robust, and they are good, with some operators better than others, those operators that have good VOD systems have tremendous usage of those VOD systems. And we prefer them because they're better than the DVR, which is unmonetized at all after day 3 or day 7, and, you know, 30, 40% in those first 3 days. Our view is like, invest in those. Let's get those really operating and humming. I mean, they're getting a lot of viewership already. That would solve at least the in-the-home issue that we're talking about. TV Everywhere would then be sort of relegated to the out-of-home right, which I think is a much smaller portion of the viewership than we're all giving it credit for, right? I think a lot of this viewership is happening in the home on these devices because it's not available on their TV in a really simple and robust way.
I would add to that. It's a great point, Mark. So when you look at, first of all, I actually think it's been kind of negative. I actually think 14 is going to be a key year for this, at least to the out-of-home point. The whole point about the complexity of logging in, I think between what we're doing, and we've got basically everyone on board at this point. We really are completely all in as a company. Every single network with almost every single distributor. So you have us doing that. Disney is very aggressive. They've been out there very early with ESPN, and you're going to see more from them. Fox this year, you know, they're really ramping up to go into next year very aggressively. And Turner's been doing this for 5 years. So I think you're going to finally see enough critical mass, and then you've got, you know, A&E and Scripps is in there. So I think for the first time you're going to have, you know, 2/3 to 80% of the programmers really in this. You got Comcast pushing it very aggressively, Verizon and Direct and Dish as well. So I do think 14 is going to be a key year. But on the monetization point, when I look back 10 years ago, when all the distributors came around and said, hey, basically give us all your content for free and we want to put it on demand. That's basically the pitch. And so everyone's like, well, wait a second, you know, we don't have the rights, and if we go get the rights, we've got to spend all this money, so how does that work? And so anyway, there's a struggle for 5 to 7 years because the programmers are looking at just pure cost. They're saying, I got to pay to clear, I've got to pay to deliver it, and I get no credit for it from Nielsen. That was the dynamic
Right.
as of just barely 2 years ago. And the moment, and the other anecdotal story, no one ever called me at my company about that, because they didn't want to deal with it. You know, the brands would never call about on-demand because they just didn't want to have, it was almost like they wish it wasn't happening. The moment the on-demand view went C3, 10 calls every single day about, well, why wasn't it up at 12:01? You know, it got there at 3:04 a.m. and, you know, and we went, it was amazing. It was overnight. And now there's a real focus on it because it's real money. TV Ever, we got a similar dynamic, at least on the ad piece. We're not making any money at all. At all. There's zero. So we're driving all this usage, and it's completely unmonetizable. And that's a huge problem. So that doesn't help. That's headwind, right? Doesn't mean that we're not doing it. We're saying, having said all that, we're still going all in because we're hoping that this is going to translate to returns in the future. But that's another big issue that's holding a lot of people back.
Yeah, I won't go as far as to say it's completely unmonetizable. It's unmonetizable in a Nielsen way. And I think that's a key difference is that, you know, we as an industry are tied to the Nielsen model and then delivering a rating that everyone understands and you can see in a trade and you can understand, you know, that, oh, we did, you know, 1 million impressions in the 18 to 49 demo and everyone, you know, can get satisfaction from that. There is monetization going on from a digital perspective in terms of dynamic ad insertion, and we've been very active in that. And you know, as we look into live streaming, which Ron and company are involved in, there is that question of do you hang around and wait for Nielsen to be able to figure out how to monetize or how to measure across these platforms, or are you dynamically serving ads into those streams to monetize it on a different level or a different way? And you know, with that comes, you know, better targeting, better understanding of who your user is, as opposed to serving, you know, content to the masses and then getting it broken down by a demographic split. And so that's one of the things that's going to be the next challenge for our industry is that from an advertising perspective is we're so used to that Nielsen, hey, I delivered this many impressions, cut me my check, to, hey, now I'm going to have to deliver it to a certain person, and it's going to be a defined ad for that user as opposed to an ad that's served to the masses.
I just one other comment on the in-home ecosystem. You know, VOD is a great product, Mark. I agree with you. It's a lot better than it used to be. But the world is moving really fast away from set-top boxes. Even the cable guys are starting to support boxes like Roku. The new Comcast boxes are going to be connected to the internet. I think half the cable boxes will be gone probably in 5 years in a home. Cable operators don't want to roll trucks. They want to pay the capital to put those in there. There's going to be a way to use the cloud to deliver programming. And using a VOD, you know, it's a good experience, but it's not great. If you want to go watch a movie or a show on HBO, you got to probably click through 5 clicks to go find that show. And then when you go to that show to go watch it, if you want to watch somewhere in the middle, it takes you 10 minutes to get there. So that's not a very good experience. You have people like me who are getting rid of, I'm not cord cutting, but I'm shaving my boxes. So I'm getting rid of boxes in rooms in my house and putting in Roku boxes and Apple TV boxes. And that gives me the ability to go watch HBO on a box, and I can, you know, one click get to the episode I want to watch and fast forward in a few seconds to where I want to go in the show.
Sticking with the monetization theme, I think you know, Dan had mentioned dynamic ad insertion and you know, different native video advertising, you know, and ad exchanges and targeting is associated with ad advertising. You know, given that the disruptive technologies that are out there, like AutoHop, and just the DVR in general, and the fact that, you know, people are time shifting their viewership, you know, through technology, and doing a variety of things that are putting a damper on the ad-supported model. How is your organization, and maybe this isn't really relevant for Epics, but how is the ad-supported model being affected, and what are you guys doing to counter the technologies that are disrupting the status quo? And are there any other monetization opportunities outside of the ad model that your companies are implementing currently or looking into strategically, given the fact that the advertising in the traditional sense, the Nielsen sense, is a challenging one to deal with?
I can hit that. So on the ad front, we're doing a combination of digital ad insertion on these new platforms, and in some cases we're actually not putting any ads in, which is a whole separate rights issue. But we want to have new digital ads in every stream. I think for most of our channels, we probably prefer a Nielsen solution, but it's not here yet. So we're sort of in this decision point of it's all about digital ad insertion. And for certain networks, like our sports networks, they'd actually prefer that because there's a higher CPM, there's such a scarcity of inventory that for sports it makes a lot of sense. But for a basic cable entertainment network, the jury's still out about whether or not DAI is better than Nielsen. But look, we have no choice because Nielsen can't rate it. So the combination of the DVR, the fast forward disable, the time shifted behavior, the fact that we've got this under monetization, I will say one of the big things that's helping that, aside from pushing for additional value within kind of that first run window, the live and the next day on demand, which we're doing, and we've got valuable content, and we're getting compensated for these expanded rights, which is good. That helps partially, but I'll say a big driver recently is Netflix and Prime. When you look at the importance of that window, and theoretically incremental to a basic cable syndication deal, at least for now. Let's assume that's true. That's a very important new revenue stream to help fund the creation of shows in the first place, and that's broadcast and cable. So just from a greenlighting process, I mean, it's really, it comes down to, okay, what are we going to get in the first run? What are we going to get in the C3? How can is there any other way we can monetize it? EST is very small, that's kind of a rounding error. But when you look at the pickup from a potential sale to an SVOD player, that sometimes makes or breaks whether or not you can fund 12 series or 10. So I think that's kind of an indirect way that we're looking at it.
Yeah, and on the ad point, I mean, the digital space is robust. I mean, we cannot create enough inventory to satisfy the advertiser demand to buy advertising on a digitally inserted basis. I mean, that's true on a Nielsen. There's a Nielsen measurement service called Online Content Ratings, OCR, which works for on-demand delivery on essentially websites, on not on iOS, not on Android, but on basically basic Microsoft and Apple PCs. When you get into the mobile world, it's not measured that way. You have to sell it on a person's 2+ basis, but that is also basically sold out. And so I look at it as the more viewership right now that is, once you get into the time-shifted world, and we're past that 3-day window, we're saying, please go watch it online. Please go watch it on your iOS device. Please go watch it on Android, because we're not monetizing it in DVR past that, and the VOD business in the home via the cable operators doesn't yet have what I would call robust dynamic ad insertion. They're working on it. We're getting closer with a few operators. I think 2014 is going to be the year where you start to see some real progress on that front. But again, that's also not going to be Nielsen measured for a while, so you're going to be selling that in a much more difficult way. But I would say that business is great, and the sort of ad hopper and the DVR and the skipping business. I mean, we're trying to do everything we can to make the DVR obsolete. I don't know if we're ever going to get there or if we'll get halfway there, but it is a goal to make it less valuable than coming to our platforms for our content.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only thing I would add about the SVOD platform is it is a great revenue stream right now for a lot of companies. We participate. We're very happy with our partnership with Amazon Prime. But there's going to come a time where you have to sense that those advertising dollars are going to offset the value you get from the SVOD partners. So when that monetization does get to those platforms, you probably are going to be better off holding that content back for yourselves. Because you can monetize it. It's surrounded by your brand. It's not a one-off show on a platform that is not connected to your brand in any way. I mean, that's one of the reasons that we've been aggressive as we have been in terms of getting our apps out there, is that when you go into an A&E or History or a Lifetime environment, you're not confronted with just one show. You see the whole litany of shows. And so the way that cable networks used to program was they'd put something on at 9, and then they'd put something on at 10, a successful show on at 9, and then they'd lead into a show at 10. That, because of the DVR, the VOD, that doesn't exist anymore. So you have to create those environments where people can essentially, cascade down and sample new content. And so that's one of the reasons that we've been as aggressive as getting into that space and then holding the consumer in our space.
Okay. Let's talk about social networking, tie-ins, and second screen experiences and other types of interactive experiences that are changing the way viewers watch TV instead of sitting back and and with the remote and being passive to being actually interactive and participating with the programming and the outcomes and the content conversation around the programming itself. Can you share with us quickly a specific example of what your organization is doing in that space? And do you believe that these offerings are complementary to your traditional linear experience or digital experience for that matter, or are they potentially cannibalistic to the more traditional brand experience like the 30-second spot? How about
I'll take it, Rob. Epic's, the average age of a premium television customer, HBO, Showtime, Starz, is about 50 years old. The average age of a Epic's customer is about 41. And, we've tried to skew younger, and one of the the ways we've done that, obviously we launched digital. We launched our website and epicshd.com before we actually launched in linear. But when we launched the website, we launched a feature called the screening room. And it's still up there, it allows you to invite up to 5 friends to watch a movie together. So, instead of going to your friend's house to go sit down, eat some popcorn and watch a movie, here you can actually go invite your friends, watch the movie, and then you can IM chat during the movie. I can't say the usage numbers have been off the charts, but it's been limited to to desktop applications. I think once we roll it out to apps, I think it'll have a much more interesting social usage.
Anybody else?
Yeah, we've done, I put 2 things out there. One is CBS Sync, which is where we've built ancillary programming approximately every 2 to 4 minutes inside of 9 programs at this point, where if you sync up your app, our CBS app, with the show, you'll actually get delivered ancillary content. I think it was really good experiments. I think some of the content is produced by my team, so I say it with a nice thing. It's kind of lame. It's like, what car is he driving? Yes, I can see what car he's driving. I don't know why we need to highlight that, but unless it's an advertiser, then it would have been cool, but it wasn't sponsored. But some things were cool, like we came up with, on NCIS LA, there was like an evidence dossier for every case that would be delivered once the bad thing happened, whether it was, murder, theft, or whatever it was. You'd get the additional information, which I think was great that the shows were producing that for us and giving it to us. Usage has not been off the charts, but except the one place we have seen a lot of usage is not when you actually sync it to the TV screen, but when you're watching online. We actually built a feature where you could pop it up in the player and watch at the same time, and we saw lots of usage of that. So what we realized is that it probably works better in the on-demand environment, not actually with live linear. And then on the social side, I'm sure all these guys have been building up their social presences for each show and trying to get talent involved. It's a great promotional tool to build up engagement with your audience. And more recently, we've sort of figured out ways to monetize it. We're a participant in Twitter Amplify. Probably have the broadest deal with those guys. We have a lot of stuff out in market. We've actually sold 5 packages alongside those things, some of which you'll see in the next couple weeks. We sold an SEC Live package, a fantasy football package. We sold a couple with prime time, one on news with 60 minutes and 60 seconds. So you're going to see some sort of short snippet content that will go out to Twitter and basically try to drive people back to the live viewing. And so we think that's really interesting. It's like marketing, and we're using a brand to help us drive that marketing, and we're using our Twitter following as well as Twitter's capability to reach out to their sort of promoted tweet audience and drive more viewers to the show. So I think that'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I'm not 100% sold that it's the end-all be-all of a future network promotion, but it is driving a lot of engagement.
Yeah.
I would just add to Twitter, just that something we announced about a month ago called See It, and it's, hopefully it'll be a cool functionality, but building on what Mark said, trying to break down that complexity of getting to the show that you want to watch. So in your Twitter feed, we'll have an icon, and the way it will work is as follows: you click the icon, and you're directly taken to, deep linked into being able to watch that video. And most of the video will require authentication. So there's a lot of back end work that we have to do, and we're recruiting other programming partners, Mark and Dan. So we can use some help.
We're not taking the calls.
Never returns my calls.
Some lawyers that can help you with the deal, I know.
We collude not to answer.
Yeah, exactly.
But absolutely, you need scale. You need all the distributors on board. You need as many of the programmers on board as possible. We're trying to take advantage. We're doing a similar Amplify kind of opportunity from an ad sales perspective. We're trying to try something new where, can we make it easier? Can we leverage that Twitter universe to get people right into the video?
Dan, quickly, is there any Duck Dynasty beard apps that we need to know about?
It's the #1 paid app in the iTunes store overall. In fact, thank you so much. Yeah, we released a game, Battle of the Beards, which has done incredibly well for us. That show is like on a different level on so many things. We could.
Please tell me that was your Halloween costume.
No, it was no. It was my dogs, in fact. No, it's social for us. Just to follow up on these guys, there is a second screen. It's called Twitter. It's great. A question is about how they will monetize. Yes, we're hearing about amplified deals. It's great for people like us. I wonder how great it is for them. But they are a great marketing platform for us.
Before we get to Q&A, I know there's one question that is going to be really interesting to hear your answers if you're a student. But as we wrap up, pretend you're, we'll role play for a little bit. You're a first-year student at Stern again. Sorry, guys, you got to go through it again. You're interested in a long and successful career as a digital media executive. What career track today, not back then, today, would you focus on, and why, and what skill sets do you need to obtain and refine in this highly competitive job market to be successful? How about we'll start with Rob?
I think it would be more challenging to try to go directly into like a digital media career. So I would recommend that you go into a discipline, go into marketing, finance, M&A work, become a recovering investment banker, ad sales, and bring that discipline into the new media group at the media company, because I think it's very competitive to kind of come in, just sort of working your way up through there. I'm not so sure what the junior jobs are within digital media. The other thing, obvious answer is obviously some engineering background, so you can understand the products and the tech for everything. I mean, it comes up in every conversation with everybody in our groups. There's technology there. It is really all about product right now.
Dan?
Yeah, I would say it's having a real understanding of the legacy business. We've been talking about distribution. The traditional distribution model is one that's known, and it's not going away anytime soon. So you have to understand how we got to where we are and what continues to essentially drive 97-8% of the revenue, to understand where you're going to go. Because if you don't understand that part of it, you're not going to be able to navigate going forward.
I think that's a great point. I think the case in point is that the person I took basically the TV ratings class from here, I now work with, Dave Poltrak, who's still the head of research at CBS. And I think knowing that traditional piece and knowing exactly how all those ins and outs work are a tremendous asset. And I'd also just say to students, it's like, just get into the company whichever way you can. I mean, it's not about what title you're going to have or how much you're going to get paid the first year out of school or whatever that is. I mean, I think I probably worried about that way too much when I got out. And trust me, I had to come backfill for Ron. I got like Ron's chair after he had left his gig in the biz dev group at NBC, and I was cleaning up his cube and stuff. But it was. But seriously, just get in. I mean, that's really the only advice I would give, is because once you get in and you can figure out what you like and what what you're good at in those companies, you can really start to maneuver what you want to get out of it.
I would just add, follow the money. Really, truly. I mean, they're commercially focused people at every company. You look at every major media company, who runs the company, it's a commercially focused person. And at the end of the day, that's all that matters. It's the money. Follow the money. If you can get associated with someone in ad sales or someone smart in distribution, or someone that's even on the traditional distribution side, that's another one. Comcast, Time Warner Cable. These are great companies to learn the traditional business. The closer you are to the money, the safer you're going to be. That's really, I've seen it. I've been here 13 and a half years. That's really, that's the one piece of advice I would give.
My advice as a lawyer is don't go to law school. Keep your MBA. Don't pay for 3 years of law school. You could do just fine with your MBA. You could retweet that. That's fine.